Today on the show, we learn to open our hearts and carve out a corner of paradise among the apocalypse. Welcome to Lore Party, the podcast that explores the stories, characters, and universes of our favorite video games. I'm Connor.
And I am Lawrence.
And we are back at it for episode 3 of The Last of Us adaptation series on HBO.
And today we'll be taking over a town, building a fence, and starting a life together.
Building physical walls and tearing down emotional ones. That's what today's all about.
Also inventing a really sweet chainsaw gas pipe flamethrower.
Oh my god, those things were awesome. There's so much to talk about in this episode. Episode 3 was a big one. I think, just the collective consciousness, like pop culture itself reacted to episode 3 of The Last of Us. I think like this one just made such a splash with its story and what it did with material from the game. There's a lot to go over there. Can't wait to break into it. As usual, if you've listened to us on this grind before, you know how it is. We'll break down the episode, go over what happened, and then get into our thoughts on it. But first, a little bit of housekeeping. Just wanted to put it out there as a reminder. We love to hear from our listeners. Feel free to email us anytime at podcast@loreparty.com with your thoughts, questions, episode ideas, criticisms, hot takes, insults, knock jokes. Who knows? We might read them on another episode somewhere down the road. So.
Yes. Also, I'm a super fan, so ask me some questions. I'm realizing now I'm coming into my own as a Last of Us super fan, so quiz me.
I'm glad you're owning that. Yeah, Lawrence is a font of knowledge. Anything you want, anything you're not clear on, or test him. Give him some trivia. Oh yeah, you think you're so smart? How about this? Just come at us.
Because I got you.
If you want to get in touch with us directly, you can also find Lawrence at Twitter and on Twitch at @producedby_LK. That's at @producedby_LK.
You can find Connor at Connor Howard VO, and that's Connor with an ER on Twitter, and on his website, Connor Howard VO. That's also Connor with an ER there, ConnorHowardVO.com. Not that .org crap.
Com. That's right, because I'm commercial. I'm all about my green.
Word.
And of course, you can always connect with the entire Lore Party team on Instagram, Twitch, and Twitter at @lore_party. Remember that underscore. It's important.
Yes.
Before we dive into episode 3, quote, long time is the title of episode 3 of The Last of Us. We're going to take a very quick break to hear from our sponsors, and then we'll come back and get right into it. So stick around.
I got to gas up my shitty ass 10. Let's go.
Got to go build a battery.
All right, and we're back. Turns out this thing is still kicking. But before we dive into this episode, if you haven't watched Last of Us episode 3, titled Long Time, now's the time to pause and go watch it and enjoy it, because it is a masterpiece. It is a beautiful piece of work, and we are about to spoil the shit out of it. So go watch it first.
Absolutely. It's worth it. Go do it. But now that we have warned you,
you can't sue us.
Here we go. So the episode begins without a cold open this time, actually. The last 2 episodes had cold opens, but no cold open on this one. We just cut right into the wilderness outside of Boston, or at least the wilderness that is being portrayed as 10 miles west of Boston. I'll get to this later, but someone pointed out that no, central Massachusetts does not have that many mountains. Come on, man. So, but that's what the title card says. You know, it's outside of Boston, and we see Joel kneeling by a river, and he's kind of rinsing off his his hands. He's getting cool water onto his bruised, bloody knuckles, and we also see him stacking stones into a narrow tower. I believe these are called cairns. They're these little tiny stacks of rocks that people can put up, you know, out in the wilderness, and they're usually some sort of remembrance marker. So this is me speculating a little bit, but this seems like he's kind of doing this for Tess. Maybe that's the thought I had, at least. He's kind of staring off into the distance and stacking rocks. He's having a private moment to himself. Like, Ellie's not around right now. So to me, this felt like he's thinking about Tess when he does this.
I didn't even think about that. That's actually, I was like, this guy's just obsessed with building things now.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, there's two interpretations. He's mourning his friend, or he just can't switch off that carpentry bug. He's always got that little handyman gene.
He had in episode 1. It's just like, this is construction by Joel Miller. So
you can't turn it off. Well, I think cairns like that with little rocks, they're usually they're like a remembrance thing. They can be grave markers. They can be, or just like literally just as simple as "I was here" is like what they usually are, what they usually indicate. But you know, so he kind of steps away from that, and he goes back to a campsite out in the woods where Ellie waits for him. He's giving her the cold shoulder, like he's barely saying anything to her. He's, you know, standoffish, and she kind of confronts him. She kind of says, like, I want you to not take out what happened on me. You know, like she's saying it a little indirectly without really saying it explicitly. You two chose, you know, what brought us here. Don't take it out on me. You wanted a battery, you know, don't blame me. And so he's not happy, but he nods at her. Like he's understanding what she's asking for. Like, okay, I'm not going to be angry at you, or I'm going to try not to be. You know, Tess, obviously in the last episode, we said goodbye to Tess and it was a tragedy, but I think Ellie wants to put it out there. Like, that's nobody's fault. Let's not make that a thing between us. Yeah. And so he just sort of silently nods at her before they break camp and move on.
Yeah, which that just bothered me, but I was like, yeah, you really are. Yeah, it's like, you really are young. Shout out to Bella Ramsey for playing a kid like so fantastically. It's so good. I was like, what a perfect line. But on their way to meet Bill and Frank, Ellie continues to pester Joel in very much teenage fashion. Mm-hmm. Just pester him with a rapid succession of questions and you know, what he's looking out for. Hostile people, and which Joel responds like he's looking out for people and not infected. Mm-hmm. You know, how he got the scar on his head. She's like, was it something lame? Did you fall down the stairs? And he's like,
that was funny.
He's just like, no, someone shot at me. And you missed. And it's like, did you shoot him back? Yeah, I missed, though. It's like, that happens more than you think.
I love that line because that is actually very true. Like, it's true because in the game, like, enemies shoot at you and miss a lot. And it's also not that easy to aim your gun in the heat of the moment in the game. So it's like, and in real life, too, people who've been in real life combat, they'll tell you, like, no, bullets will fly and not hit anyone for a while. And then someone will just get unlucky and get hit. And so, like, no, he's wrong. He's not wrong.
Yeah.
That's what is funny because, like, it happens more than you think. People miss.
Joel Miller wisdom.
That's
and
right.
She's like, you know, hey, are Bill and Frank nice? And Joel's like, Frank is. Joel is probably just like, this is more questions than I ever want to be asked. But like, so she then asks again for a gun, which is like, you know, very, very, it's a callback to the game, the very beginning of
broken record.
Yeah, always wanting that gun. And Joel is just going to keep denying her. So the two stop by an abandoned gas station where Joel previously stashed some gear that he can't seem to find or he is zeroing in on. Ellie sees a Mortal Kombat arcade cabinet and goes like crazy and is enthusiastically sharing details about what she learned from a friend who knows everything about it, which I liked this scene because I liked that they added Mortal Kombat into the scene.
Yeah, they made it a real game because I think in the Last of Us video game, the in-game game, I'm saying game a lot, but the arcade machine that she recognizes in the game version of Last of Us is like a fictional game called The Turning, I think. It's like a vampire fighting arcade game. But yeah, they made it Mortal Kombat in this. I guess it'd be more relatable, just something more recognizable. So yeah, she runs up. I love it because it's like, oh my God, there's this character called Melina and she eats you and pukes out your bones and it's awesome. And like,
yeah,
it was like really fun.
And in the game, it was like someone, I think they were called like Angel Knives, and they like
Angel Knives,
slashed you up and shit. See, guys, super fan. If I was on Jeopardy, I'd be like Last of Us 1000. I'd clear the category and then lose it all.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, dominating one column doesn't get you all the way across the finish line in Jeopardy, unfortunately.
I just leave after that. I'd be like, you can't. This is all I came here for.
It's like, yeah, okay, I've done what I came here for. I'm out of here.
Take this.
So while Lawrence is playing Jeopardy and hoping for questions about Last of Us, Joel is attempting to kind of relocate and uncover what he'd previously hidden at this place. And it's funny, Allie's like, you forgot where it is, didn't you? And he's like, I'm zeroing in on it. Like, and so while he's busy with that, Ellie decides to take a look around on her own. And she eventually makes her way into the basement of, it's like a gas station where they're in some kind of gas station basically. And she like just kind of climbs down into the basement and she's looking around, and all she finds that's useful, at least, is a box of tampons. And so she's like, oh, sweet, those will come in handy. And so, but before, she can, get back out of the basement, a nearby infected snarls and startles her. It's like she hears an infected noise. Luckily, this critter is trapped under a pile of dirt and debris, and it's not a threat. It's like dying. It's like just half buried under a collapsed ceiling, basically. And she just kind of like comes up and starts like dissecting it almost. She uses her switchblade to like cut open its face. It's like, I was like curious about this. Is she just like, wondering what's underneath the skin and just, wants to know more about them? That's what it seemed like. She was just like, oh man, I don't get an opportunity to see infected up close, so I'm going to, take it apart a little bit. That's what it seemed like to me, at least.
If I had to guess, and I won't go super deep, I think she's pissed off. I think
maybe
she's got a little bit of anger towards the infected for specific reasons.
Mm-hmm.
But
yeah, that makes sense. And so yeah, she's kind of like just taking her time with it, but eventually she does finish off the infected, stabs it in the head with her switchblade, and she comes back, and by the time she's back, Joel has uncovered his stash, and he hides his rifle inside, the automatic rifle that he got from the guard at the Boston QZ. And it's like, Allie's curious, like, why are you leaving that behind? It's useful. And he says, well, it's low on ammo. There's not much out there for it, so it's dead weight, basically. Which Joel, always the practical one, very, very, pragmatic. He says, yeah, might as well just leave it here. And so they collect their belongings and hit the road again.
Yeah, I was like, she's like, oh, I can use it. I'm like, that gun is the same size as you. I am not trusting a child.
Yeah, no way.
I am not trusting a child to hold this and hoping I don't get shot. You get a pistol, but not this.
Yeah.
It's like, so on the, they hit the road again. They see wreckage from a crashed airplane on top of a hill, which was kind of cool. Ellie is like super amazed by it. And then Joel remembers flying in a commercial aircraft and is like, just like really like downplaying it, like he's talking to someone who was born pre-infection. Like he's like, you gotta sit in the middle seat and pay $12 for a sandwich.
It wasn't really all that cool, trust me.
It was cracked up to be. And then like Ellie's just like, you flew, you were in the sky. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, that is actually fucking cool when you haven't actually, when you can't do that anymore.
I do really like these little examples of the generational difference, like, just stuff that Ellie has no experience with at all and stuff that's like mundane to Joel, like it's not a big deal. Right. And flying is like, she can't even imagine flying, like, because no one flies anymore. So it's like, yeah, just the novelty of it alone, that they're from different worlds. It's always cool to see that in action.
Yeah, because she could only technically go, like, right now, like, most likely she could only go on land. Like, she's not going to, there's probably not going to be any sea travel or air travel or any type of that. So, like, it's just kind of cool to think about something like that. So then Ellie starts peppering him with questions again because she's a teenager. And she's like, how did the government fail to prevent the cordyceps outbreak? Which I loved because how she put it in the show is like, how did the shitty government fail to prevent a pandemic? And I'm like, I was like,
yeah,
in 2020,
you'd be surprised.
Yeah, I was like, I like that little like Bob Ross social commentary that they wanted to sprinkle in there.
That was
yeah,
funny.
like that cracked me up. And then she was like, she just kind of asked though about like the cordyceps outbreak and expresses disbelief that like the world could fall apart that quickly. But luckily she's with Joel, who was there. And he explains that, pretty much like what people have managed to put together over the years. And the theory is, and this is one of the fan theories that was circling around online that they just brought in here, is that the fungus mutated to infect people and contaminated part of the food supply early on and ended up basically hitting all the major cities worldwide. Which is why in the first episode, it was really good that they didn't get that pancake mix or that cake.
Yeah, dodged a bullet. Yeah. Dodged 2 bullets.
Good thing
there.
For those eggs and those shells. Like, otherwise, they'd have been doing the twitchy dance. And this is like the first infected people unknowingly ate contaminated food, got sick, started biting the next day. And then like Friday, September 6th, 2003 was the night it all went wrong. And by Monday, it was all gone. So like that was one hell of a weekend.
Seriously.
Oh, that was
man.
It was never the same again.
But imagine going home from work that Friday afternoon, like, see you guys on Monday. It's like, no, you won't.
Boy, today fucking sucks. I need to recharge.
Then you get into the office and like your coworkers are eating each other. Like, hey, boy, Mondays, right?
Right. Yeah, like
oh my god.
Oh my god, yeah, it is like it's just so fucked up thing. Someone probably went home and was like, yeah, I need a break. Little do they know.
Imagine someone quit that day. I'm not going back to work on Monday. I fuck this job.
Yeah,
I'm out. You know, I can't go back.
Fuck this job. I don't need it. You'll all see.
You're all gonna see. Oh, Jesus Christ. That was actually a really interesting scene, though. I loved the subtle infusion of Joel's background into him just like answering her question. Like Ellie was just curious, like from a high level, like just mechanically, like, you know, you could just give her the straight facts of what happened, but Joel very subtly infused a little bit of what happened to him. Like he got more personal than he would have otherwise. I think more than he was meaning to, just in the process of answering her questions. Like he was talking about, it was in basic ingredients like flour or sugar, and then he just kind of said pancake mix. Like he just kind of threw that out there. And like you could see he had a far away look in his eye as like he's that's something personal. And when he said the words Friday, September 6th, 2003, that was coming from deep within him. Like he's remembering stuff he doesn't like remembering, but it's like he's just detached enough, and this is all basic information enough that it doesn't feel like he's opening up to her, but he kind of is. That was like a really cool dialogue to watch.
Yeah, he was like, Joel was really aloof this entire episode, which I really liked. And like, shout out to Pedro Pascal for the excellent performance, because conveys this, like, it's super subtle. You got to be paying attention, but yeah, it's really natural.
Yeah. And so not long after this conversation, though, they kind of, you know, they're on the road, and Joel stops Ellie, and you know, he puts a hand out. He says, well, we should probably get off the road, go around through the woods. And you know, she asks why. Is there something dangerous up ahead? It's like, well, no, it's not dangerous, but there's just something I don't want you to see. And of course, being a 14-year-old, Ellie's like, well, now I have to see it. Like, come on, like, you know, what are we talking about here? And so, you know, she's unfazed, ignores his warning, and she just pushes on, and she comes up on a ditch on the side of the road, and it's filled with skeletal human remains. It's very clearly some kind of mass grave. Just a lot of bodies were put in this ditch, and there's just a stunned silence, like a pause. Ellie just kind of stares at it. She doesn't even ask anything, I think she's just silent, and Joel just kind of volunteers information. He just kind of says, about a week after Outbreak Day, soldiers evacuated the rural, communities and took civilians to quarantine zones if there was room. And, the pregnant pause there. Basically, he explains it like if people were taken to quarantine zones, but they were full, the people were just gunned down on the side of the road, just executed en masse, and just put in a ditch like that. So Ellie's obviously very disturbed by this, and she wonders why, like, these people weren't even sick, right? And Joel says, probably not. I was like, well, why would you kill uninfected people? They're healthy people. And he says, dead people can't be infected. So again, that really just calls back to this brutal scorched earth policy that what was left of the government at the time, like from what we know of both the game and the show, the background lore here is that the government fell apart pretty quick. Like it just kind of was ineffective, and martial law was imposed pretty early on. And that's where Fedra basically comes from, the antagonistic version of Fedra, where like they are the bad guys of this setting, or at least one of the bad guys of the setting. And like we saw in the first episode, just Sarah getting shot and all that stuff. Fedra's policy was containment. Just, you don't have to save people, just make sure they don't get infected and make more of a problem. And so it was just this absolutely brutal vignette, like this glimpse at what Fedra did, what atrocities Fedra was responsible for early on after the outbreak. And in fact, it gets even worse though. The camera zooms in on two skeletons covered in faded clothing. One of the skeletons is very small, way too small. It's a very small skeleton, and it seems to be covered in pajamas, like an infant's clothing. It was that part right there, like, killed me a little bit. That was hard.
Yeah, that sucked. George Bush's America, man. George Bush just.
I don't know if we can blame Fedra on W anymore. At a certain point, it's out of W's hands. I feel
then I'm blaming Cheney. For it's one of those two. One of those two was like, "Listen, I don't want to do this anymore, so I'm selling. I'm selling out. Who wants America?"
Yeah. So the cordyceps outbreak turned it from W's America to Cheney's America very, very quickly. Hard right turn.
Way down the chain of command, all the way to some guy, and it was like I honestly just feel like it was FEMA, and someone just changed the letters, and they were like.
Yeah, we're not FEMA anymore.
Fedra, those were the old guys.
We need to be scarier. What's scarier than FEMA? How about Fedra?
So now everybody get inside of Boston and shut up.
God.
Oh my God. So we see, we do see this depressing scene of this baby's skeleton, and then we flash back to September of 2003, back in the W-verse. And soldiers are in a rural town of Lincoln, Massachusetts, and they can be seen like herding a town of civilians into trucks. And meanwhile, we go to a basement. There's a man in there who's observing the evacuations through his closed circuit security cameras. And soldiers go in to search his house, but apparently didn't notice his hidden lair. And it was actually funny because I think they just didn't give a fuck, because he goes to the top and Bill's got his gun, and you hear the guy on the radio specifically say, yeah, we searched the basement. I'm in the basement now and no one's here. And then they leave. So I think it was just like, I'm stepping in, I'm stepping out.
I think you're right, but also it was like a second basement.
Yeah, he had a bunker.
It was it was like a sub basement under the real basement. It was hidden under like a bookshelf. So like, he was under his own basement, but I think the soldiers were not very thorough. I think they were in a hurry. They probably could have found maybe the hidden entrance to his sub basement, but I think, like you said, they're like, "No, we looked, no one here, good enough." Like they weren't like super thorough about it,
and because all these people were about to get gunned down too, so it's like, all right, it was kind of a round them up. Yeah, it was honestly like this was a joint military Fedra operation, and it wasn't amazing. But they miss him, and his we see that his like sub basement is just like kind of full of weapons and ammunition and canned goods, and like just a bunch of supplies. Like he is a prepper, or a survivalist.
Big time.
And so like he pushes open this like this like secret chest thing, or like some of his furniture folds up, and then he comes out of this secondary basement and like exits the house with a gas mask, a shotgun, a pistol, and then like he's got the ammunition strap around him,
the bandolier,
just going nuts. And then after like
he's ready for war,
he's just like checking around with the gun to make sure he's got the town to himself. And then he goes on a shopping spree and steals his neighbor's boat, loots some gasoline. Like he's just building up supplies in like from like boarded up storefronts. It even breaks into a utility station to keep his gas line to his house in that area operational, which is has a few uses, we'll talk about later. And then he sets up a generator and goes about like fortifying all the just like kind of that general block. Like in the show or in the game, he had a whole town, but like this is actually more realistic because he gets like a good kind of town square.
Yeah, he has like a cluster of houses fenced off. It's like he's made a compound, as opposed to in the game, he basically put up fences in like alleyways, like in a more suburban looking place. This place in the show looks more rural, like the buildings are a little bit more spread out. But in the game, it's like he had almost the entire town to himself, but his fences were more like built into the city architecture. But here he'd literally built a fence of like, razor wire and aluminum and all that. And I noticed like the gas line thing. He is definitely the type of guy who's like, no way in hell you're taking my gas stove. I'm all about my gas stove. I'm keeping that gas stove.
Got used so fucking much in this.
My man was cooking. Buddy was cooking over here. He was just making gourmet shit nonstop.
You can't be a like if you call yourself a survivalist, like you have to be able to chef like Bill. Like you're not a survivalist if you can't chef like Bill.
No
man
doubt.
Was living.
Yeah, he's so with his own private compound fenced off, full of traps. He's all set. He's ready to survive, and survive he does for about 4 years. We cut to 4 years later. Bill is kind of just going about his day to day. He's I think he's like welding something. He's like building shit. He's just surviving and
banging meals. I can't cook like
absolutely.
I can't cook like that now.
Cooking some amazing stuff. There's this one trap. I think he watches it. Like he watches on one of his security camera monitors where an infected guy walks into a tripwire, and the tripwire sets off like a shotgun shell, which blows off the infected's head. And he's like eating his lunch as he sees this, and he goes, "Never gets old." It's fucking awesome. Yep. Well, so yeah, like 4 years on, he's been by himself, surviving, getting along for 4 years now, and he hears an alarm go off in his house, and he notices that one of his sort of pitfall traps, where it's like a false ground over a pit, has been triggered, and someone's fallen into it. And so he walks up to the pit, shotgun at the ready. He's just, about to execute whatever's inside it. He's assuming it's infected, ready to blow his head off. But he's surprised when a human voice comes out of the hole, and someone's like, I'm unarmed. A scared and disheveled man is inside the hole, and he claims that he's looking for Boston. He's like, "Hey, I'm just trying to get to Boston." He says he came from the Baltimore QZ. And an interesting little tidbit this guy offers. Like, we didn't really hear much about the Baltimore QZ in the game, as far as I know, but this man says Baltimore QZ gone. It's just gone. Yep. He doesn't offer details, but that can mean a lot of things. Could mean infected, took over, or fireflies threw it over, or hunters, or whatever. So Bill is like, okay, you're not a threat. You're not infected. I guess I can let you out. So he lets a ladder down into the pit, and the man climbs back out. But Bill doesn't let him out until he scans him to make sure he's not infected. And then he's like, okay, well, Boston's that way. See ya. He's just kind of sending him on the way, like, move along, move along. But the man says, hey, my name's Frank. I could use something to eat. And Bill's like, I'm not giving out free lunches here, Frank. It was just funny. Bill doesn't want the word getting out among the other vagrants that there's free food in Bill's town. And so that was
my favorite line of that was just like, yeah, this isn't an Arby's. I don't give away free lunch. And he's like, Arby's is a restaurant. They don't give away free lunch. And that was kind of...
Yeah, Frank's like, they didn't give out free food. They were a restaurant.
And that was just like the checkmate. It's like, you got... But,
yeah. Bill just kind of stares at him like, touche.
Yeah. Like, okay. you got me. Come in for some lunch.
Okay, you got me. Yeah, so Bill's like, we can see him like kind of considering. He's like, okay, fine, come on in. So he invites him in to feed him.
Yeah, and like, just got him. One free lunch now, thank you.
You have rhetorically bested me. You've earned something to eat.
And like, so Frank enjoys his his first hot shower because Bill also has hot water. Like, so it's Bill. Living large. Bill's town is wild. And it's like his first shower in a very long time. Cause like Frank had mentioned that he was in a group of 10 people and now there's just him. So like he's probably been through some shit and he hadn't eaten 2 days and he was just dirty. But like, Bill evidently not used to company prepares a meal for them, but struggles to make conversation. And it's just like not a meal. Like this man prepared a meal that I would eat like this.
He put together some Julia Child shit. Like it was looking really
rabbit
good.
With the pan sauce and the vegetables, like in the wine pairing. Like it's like if I were to get this meal now, I'd pay an ass ton for it. So
yeah, seriously, this is something you get from one of those restaurants that shows up on Google with the $3 signs. You know what I mean?
Yeah, got a Michelin star fucking restaurant in this town. And like Frank compliments him on his cooking and the shared appreciation of the wine, and that was funny because he was like, "This food, fuck, it's great," and then Bill is like. He's like, everything tastes good when you're starving. And Frank is like, not like this. I'm looking at this food. I was like, hell no, I know this food tastes good.
Yeah, it looks like it tastes amazing. I loved how Frank just took like one bite and his immediate reaction was just he paused and goes, what the fuck?
Yeah.
It just looks like what the fuck?
Like this was worth falling into a fucking pit. like
seriously.
Dude. And so like after the meal, which like, Frank is enjoyed that meal. There's this awkward silence and, Frank feels pressure to be on his way, but he sees that Bill has this antique piano and he like kind of goes wild over it. There's a funny line where he's like, do you know how much this is worth? And Bill's like, nothing now. It's
currently like, nothing. Yeah.
It's like, I forgot. And then, so he goes through all of these books, and asks to play it, and like he tosses all these books out and he's like, this isn't you. Then he finds this like Linda Ronstadt sheet music and is like, this is you. He's like knows like, this is you, Bill. And then he plays okay and then shitty and then and then encourages Bill.
Yeah, he's not an expert at
it's like he got pretty far and then it started to get a little choppy, but then Bill was like, he encouraged Bill to play.
Yeah, it's like Frank plays better than I would, obviously, but not like amazing. He's not concert level. So but it's funny though, because also it seems like he's playing a song that is very special to Bill, and so Bill is like, I can't stand to listen to this song being butchered this way. And so he's like, no, not that one.
And it's hidden too. And it's like, that's like, it's like, that's why he's like, oh, this is the thing. Like it was like, hey, no, these other songs were like classical compositions. And you can tell it was like, Bill was like, these are my mom's. So it's like, you can tell like they start to kind of set up what's going on here. Just like with the books, like you start to see how sheltered Bill is in that moment.
Yeah. Like we can put together that, the piano, the music, probably the house that he lives in were all his mother's. Like Bill just inherited a lot of this stuff, but the Linda Ronstadt music, that's like very personal to him. It's like, that's what's his, like Frank surmised. And so, like you said, Frank does kind of like encourage, well, Bill, he tells Bill like, well, why don't you go ahead, play for me. And he's like, just one song, then I'll go. That's kind of like the deal they make. Like, okay, just play for me and I'll go. Bill sits down and he starts playing a Linda Ronstadt song called Long, Long Time, the name of the episode. And it's immediately, Frank was playing it like a little too fast, a little too loud, and Bill's like soft and heartfelt about it. And his singing and his keystrokes, they are tender and real and authentic, and they seem to come directly from his soul. This song just kind of comes out of Bill. And while Frank is standing behind Bill as he's playing, and he's like on the verge of tears. Like the playing was so beautiful. And, I think Frank says what we as the audience are all thinking, like, you don't play that way unless you're thinking about someone special. Like that's a love song, and it's very special to you, obviously. So Frank asks, so who's the girl? Who's the girl you're singing about? And Bill's also very emotional. He's also near tears, and he just says, there is no girl. And Frank seems to understand where this is going, and he puts a reassuring hand on Bill's shoulder, and he moves in to kiss him. And Bill returns the kiss. They kiss each other. And it's like this spontaneity, like, it's like this thing that happens suddenly, but they're both okay with it. And Bill finally gives Frank his name. Frank just goes, yes. So what's your name?
I didn't realize that till I watched this the second time. I was like, oh shit, you didn't even give your name.
Frank, you got to get his name first. Come on, man. Better late than never.
I loved this scene because all the way through the dinner, all the way through, like all the way up until this point, like even up to the kiss, like Bill was just like so like shoulders up, so reserved.
Yes.
And like just like kind of just sucked into himself, but like he loosens up right after this moment. Like I was like, good God, you can stand and like you can relax a little bit.
Yeah, I think just cooking for him like started the process, but playing piano for Frank is what really brought Bill's walls down and really opened him up. And like that's like I'll get into this later, but this is like a man like not used to feeling his feelings or just like giving them the space they need, and he's just really opening up. And so, they formally meet for the first time. They, their interactions take on this new energy, and they go to bed together. And Frank is clearly the more experienced of the two, and he takes the lead. And this was an interesting interaction because he asks Bill, like, have you done this before? And Bill says, well, no. Well, a girl a long time ago. He kind of like blurts out, there was a girl a long time ago. And I really liked Frank's response. Like he just says, like, I know, I get it. I know. I love that like subtle, kind of intimation of a gay man, a man who, is not attracted to women. He's attracted to men, but he's been around long enough to probably at some point to have struggled with that sexuality. Like he wasn't really sure he was gay yet. And like, had an experience with a woman and nothing since. And so it's this like, again, the walls coming down, like Bill admitting that and like kind of opening up to this new person. And so it's this really cool, really natural, very human interaction between the two of them. But the last thing we see, Frank is like, okay, I'll take the lead. Don't worry. But if I do this, I'm going to be staying for at least a few more days. Okay.
I loved this like part. They're kind of like, they're sort of just like, it's just kind of just their sort of pillow talk, or like, and so it's just like him just saying like, I don't have sex for free lunches. And I was like, that's why I love Frank. I love Frank because Frank is always himself, even in the most hostile situations. He's got a gun pointed at him. He's like nervously making jokes. They're having this like really like super tender connected moment, and like instead of just being like, I like you, I could stay a while if that's okay, he's like, you know what, I just want you to know, like I'm not a whore and I don't have sex for free lunches. That's a quote from the episode. But I'm just like I love that about him, because it's just like, I love that about him because it is such a it is he's always true to himself. And I think that helps Bill out a ton. Like he is so true and so natural to himself, and it doesn't stop because we have, we see that this few days has turned into a few years because we cut to 3 years later, and Bill and Frank, they've fully like settled in together, which for Frank, that's probably pretty easy when you just showed up with a one outfit.
Right.
So they're fully living together. They're cohabitated, And they are bickering like an old married couple. Like, just burst out of the door right away, and it's like, fuck you. I'm like,
fuck you, Bill.
And so, like, they're like really like yelling at each other, and it's funny ass argument, because it's just Frank wants to paint the house and maintain the area. And it's like, he like just generally wants to have a beautiful living space. And, you know, Bill is this like resource management guy. And like, he explains to Bill, it's like, you know, paying attention to things is how we show love. And like, you know, that's such a powerful and real line, like and if you're in a relationship with anyone, it is paying attention to these small things is like how you show that you care and how you show love to somebody. And then he also insists on having friends, which is like, in this world and like in this economy, friends are already expensive. Not easy. In this world, hell no. Like, friends might try to kill you. But like, Bill is like, hell no, there's no friends. There's no friends to be had. And Frank is like, psych, because I've been talking to a nice woman on the radio. And Bill's like, what?
You what? I love that moment. Just the outrage in Nick Offerman's delivery was like you what? He's about to explode. I gotta say, like, as a married man, we're both married men here. Like, I think we could say, like, there's nothing more relatable than arguing about the decorations of what are we going to do with our shared living space? We have different ideas of what our living space needs to be. And, you know, like, I'm just asking you for a little investment. Let me feel welcome here is like what, and it's just, like any two people sharing a space in a romantic setting, especially, like, there's going to be stuff like this. And also this actually is an interesting call into, you know, the game version of Bill and Frank. Like, we can talk about that in more detail later, but Game Frank also had this attitude of, I want more out of life. Like, we can have more. I want us to have friends. And that, you know, obviously that's an optimistic outlook. Bill does not have that optimism where he's like, no, with who? With fucking literally who? But so there is that hint though at the end, like, oh, well, I've been talking to a nice woman on the radio, actually. That was hilarious. But so the nice woman on the radio, quote unquote, turns out to be none other than Tess. And so we cut to a fancy garden party that Bill and Frank are hosting for Joel and Tess, a little double date situation going on. And it's, you know, again, the comedy is like woven throughout the entire episode so well, because like, this is also funny because Bill's just sitting here at a table with guests pointing a fucking Colt 45 pistol at them. Frank is like, can you not? Can you put that away? It's so funny.
Oh yeah, I loved this part.
Yeah, and so like Bill and Joel are both the taciturn, quiet types, just staring across the table at each other, while Frank and Tess are both like making the effort of being friendly. They're actually talking to each other about an arrangement. They're like discussing how they're going to work together about, you know, smuggling and finding goods and all that stuff. And so, you know, they're both like into this, like, this is cool. This is fun. Let's do it. But Bill is very clearly uneasy with all this. Joel understands though. Like, he kind of tells Bill like, hey, I get it. You know, you don't want us, you know, messing up your situation, but we can help you. He kind of like, Joel kind of gives Bill the sales pitch. Like, there's things in the QZ we can get you, and there's things out here you can get us. You know, we can help each other out. But Bill still not interested, not sold on it. He says, hey, Frank and I, we're self-sufficient here. We have what we need, where we can take care of ourselves. But Joel sees through this. He knows this is BS, because it's funny. I liked how he looks over and looks at the fence. He's like, that fence has like a year on it tops. So it's starting to rust. You're going to need more aluminum. I can get you that. So Joel's cool as a cucumber over here. Like, I got what you need.
It's that Joel Miller construction hour, man. He's like, I can spot a shoddy fence job from a mile away, man. You don't fool me with that bullshit fence.
Where'd you get that? Come on, amateur hour.
He's the fourth property brother.
So on their way out, Joel and Tess are about to leave, and we can see Tess and Frank are actually discussing a radio code. They're like kind of setting up a precedent for like, hey, if you want to communicate with us, how about we use music to do it? And like, so they're like making plans over there. And Joel pulls Bill aside for one more, quick word of advice. And he tells Bill, like, hey, yeah, you're pretty safe up here from Fedra. They're not going to come up here and bother you. You're off their radar. And your traps, they'll keep the stray infected away. What you got to be careful of are people, the raiders. They will come at night. They will, they'll break in and, be careful, basically. Just kind of gives them a warning, which unfortunately seems to come true.
Yeah. I just really loved, I loved Frank and Tess together. It was just like cute as hell. Like they're just
immediate
just
friends,
so happy to see each other and hang out. And then these other people are just like, I'm here because of them. Like,
yeah, no, you see that dynamic in double dates all the time. Like the two folks who are like just ecstatic to be hanging out, and the other two who are like, hey, this is cool. I guess this is happening. Whatever.
Yeah, like there was a part where they like go away and leave those two together, and it just like I was like, oh yeah, I've been in this situation where I'm like, no, don't go.
Oh yeah,
what are you doing?
So how about them Browns?
Yeah,
just,
like, ooh, God, this sucks. And so we cut, we cut 3 years later. Like Lincoln is secured with a perimeter wall of wrecked cars. Frank is taking Bill out for a jog and shows him a pleasant surprise, which that wasn't that jog because Bill was struggling.
Dude, jogging sucks.
Oh my God. Yeah, it's so terrible. But there's a patch of strawberries growing in a garden on their route. Mm-hmm. And Bill at first is happy, but then isn't happy when Frank reveals he traded one of his guns for a packet of seeds. When they, the best part of this was such a great moment because like when they, sit down and enjoy the fresh fruit together, their worries kind of melt away. And like Bill laughs. He just like he eats a strawberry and laughs. And it's
he does his classic Nick Offerman chuckle.
It sounded like
it was so
sounds
adorable.
Like Clank from it sounds like Clank from Ratchet and Clank.
It does, yeah.
I'm like, oh, this is something. I was like, this is such a uniquely you laugh, and I love it. But like, their worries melt away, and Bill apologizes for getting older faster than Frank. And one thing I noticed when I watched this again, what Frank's response to him is what I loved, and he says like, getting older means that we're still here. And I was like, I loved that. And then Bill tells Frank that he was never afraid until Frank showed up, and like it's just like we're opening up. Like you got a guy that was prepared to live the rest of his days alone in a town that was booby trapped to shit. And like, so this is huge.
I was never afraid before you showed up is such a huge emotional admission for Bill to make. Like he's showing such growth in just like these cutaways, these time skips where we're just watching them grow old together and grow closer together. And just the whole strawberries thing was just awesome. Like it was so wholesome. And like, you love to see, especially with LGBT representation. I know that a lot of people I know who were very happy about the representation here, just like seeing an LGBT couple grow old together. Like it's amazing. It's beautiful. You don't see that in a lot of TV, a lot of media. So this is just a really cute scene, but unfortunately it doesn't last forever. It seems like later, maybe that same year, maybe a couple nights later, Joel's warning unfortunately seems to come true because it's a dark, stormy night, and we see intruders, just uninfected humans, just humans with bad intentions, are trying to break into the fence surrounding Lincoln. Unfortunately for them, they set off these perimeter traps.
Badass.
And these crazy ass, amazing, like just mad scientist shit traps go off. They're like little flamethrowers that just shoot out jets of fire and just immolate a bunch of these raiders. And they're starting to set off like booby traps, like explosives along the perimeter. And Frank wakes up. He's like, he's seeing fire and explosions out the window, and he jumps out of bed and he's shouting for Bill, like, Bill. And he looks at the window, he grabs a pistol, he arms himself, and he looks outside to check the street. And in the street there, he finds Bill. Bill's fighting off the raiders with a rifle. He's just pow, just shooting at the Raiders. And Frank tries to get Bill back inside, and Bill's trying to just kill the rest of them, but they're trying to get back inside together, and that's when Bill gets shot, catches a bullet to his abdomen, lower torso, and he's bleeding pretty bad. And
can we take a moment to recognize that this man was just in the middle of the street with a rifle? I was like, damn, son, no cover. He's I
did want to talk about that. Yeah. So I know that Bill, we don't know that Bill's a trained combat veteran or anything. He's a survivalist. He's a prepper. He has a lot of guns, but apparently isn't an expert at using them necessarily, because you'd think he would know to take cover, hide behind something. You'd think he would prepare a sniping position somewhere, but no, he's standing middle of the street, shooting at guys who can shoot back. Not smart.
Just scoping him.
Scoping.
Dude, I'm what the hell? Not behind a bush.
He's trying to do. I think he's trying to make a quick scoping montage for to put on YouTube later. Or something.
Meanwhile, everybody's just getting cooked. It's
yeah. So yeah. To be fair, the Raiders have their work cut out for them. They're getting burned alive and shot at by a guy in the street. So, he feels oh, well, they're going to be too busy being on fire to shoot back. But unfortunately, they do shoot back. Bill catches a bullet, and it's on Frank to get him back inside, lay him on the table, and start trying to treat his wound. Puts pressure on it, tries to sterilize it. And Bill is talking. He's trying to, talk at Frank as if he's about to die. He's ready. He's this might be it. So he's telling Frank, call Joel. He'll take care of you. You can't be here alone. Yada, yada, yada. The fence will kill the rest of them.
Yeah, keep the gas on.
He's keep the gas. No, it's amazing because he's on death's door. He's he's talking like he knows he's about to die, and he's giving Frank a fucking checklist. Here's your to-do list. Call Joel. Keep the gas on. So pragmatic to the end. He's, Bill's that guy who, mind on the job at all times.
This is the gas stove again.
No, it was.
Yeah. On the libs with the gas stove flamethrower.
You're not taking my gas from me. But no, it's also beautiful and poignant again to watch Frank take care of Bill and kind of talking through it yeah, tell me about the fence. He's kind of absentmindedly trying to patch him up while Bill's just rambling. And so yeah, we cut away from that, and it didn't look good for Bill. In that cutaway for a second, I was are they gonna kill off Bill right here? That's what I was thinking for a second there, because it was getting pretty intense. Yeah. So
and I do like the how they ended it with while he's telling him this, he's I won't be alone, you're here. He's just the reassurance from Frank to Bill is so loving in this moment where there's people in the background, they're just getting cooked by a flamethrower. It just right, so it's just and I also just one last thing I love is leave the gas on because it will kill the rest of them. I'm we're good at this point. We're good on the Raiders. They're done.
That'll take care of itself.
It will be cooked thoroughly. We'll just have to remove the bodies. But
and then we can pair them with a Beaujolais later, like the rabbit.
My God. And so the next scene that we get from Bill and Frank is 10 years later, which is it. Mm-hmm. I'll speak more about this later, but yeah, it is 10 years later. So Bill obviously didn't die. And he's recovered from his wound, but we get a shot right in the beginning of Frank is ill and he's in a wheelchair and he's outside. He's calling to Bill to bring him inside. We see Bill is gardening and he's painting, Bill's gardening, and they're just kind of enjoying this quiet life together. So we take we cut to them eating, and Bill's reminding Frank to take his pills while helping him eat. He's cutting his food, and he's handing him the pills, and he's an orangey one, a little white one, and a round one. And it's it's just it's super cute. It's just something they've been together for 16 years now. They're so damn long. And if my math is wrong, I'm sorry, everybody. They've been together.
I think you got it. They've been
together a long time.
Yeah.
And so later he helps Frank into bed, and they go to sleep. And so wake up in the morning, we see Frank is in his wheelchair, and Bill scolds him because like Frank is like, it only took me all night, but I finally got in there. And Bill is like scolding him about being in the wheelchair. He's like, don't sleep in the wheelchair because when you do it, you know, your feet turn blue and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And, you know, Frank kind of stops him and just tells Bill, like, it doesn't matter because this is my last day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That was like a pin drop moment. Like the whole scene went dead silent just with, you know, because today's my last day. And, you know, we cut to their living room. Bill is sitting on a couch and they're talking it out. And Frank has made up his mind. He's decided it's final that he's going to end his life peacefully on his terms. But Bill is just kind of in denial. He's grieving. He's crying. He's, you know, throwing out like little lifelines there. Like, you know, but, you know, what if a doctor comes? What if we find a doctor who could help you? And, you know, you might get better. And Frank's just kind of like talking him through it, just kind of talking him down off the ledge. Like, no, listen, it's what I have wasn't even curable before all this, especially now. It's just, come on, what are we talking about here?
Right.
But, you know, he's reassuring him. Like, you know, we had bad days together, but I've had more good days with you than with anyone else. And what Frank wants from Bill is just one last good day. And it's just, God, the heartbreak is starting to really set in here. Like, it's the downslope of this episode is beginning where it's like, God damn, this is going to get really fucking sad. And Frank just kind of explains what he wants from his last day. I want to go pick out outfits. We'll get married officially, finally. We'll have a nice dinner. And then you'll crush up all these pills and put them in my wine. And then we'll go to bed and I'll fall asleep in your arms. And he like, this is obviously, he's thought this through. Like, this is just, you know, this is it. Like, this is what I've decided. And Bill's like, I can't do it. I don't want to do it. But Frank just gives him one more request. Like, if you love me the way I want you to.
Yeah. And I mean, I've cried a bunch in this episode, and by this point, I'm crying even and more. It's just, just really, it's hard, and it's like,
it's hard.
And this, they just have this one last beautiful day together, doing the things that Frank wants to do. You know, they put on the suits, they privately exchange wedding rings. And they sit down for one last home-cooked meal, which was the same first meal that they had together.
Mm-hmm. The rabbit. Yeah.
And then so Bill prepares the wine, and he adds the pile of crushed pills to Frank's glass, just as Frank asked. And Frank chugs it. He really downs it. And then Bill also downs his glass. And then Frank stares at him and figures out that Bill had already drugged the bottle, and that he is going to commit suicide with him. And, you know, Bill confesses, saying, I'm old, I'm satisfied, and you were my purpose. Which, like, this is
I'm getting stabbed in the heart multiple times by this episode.
Yeah, this is a painfully beautiful episode. Yeah. And, you know, they share this one last conversation before going to bed together. And, and you know, all of us at home with a soul and a heart, like, bawling our eyes out uncontrollably.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to put into words. It's just so relatable, but, like, not relatable. It just hits you where you are. Like, you know, that's a very human thing. And just an act of love, you know, it's funny because Frank, like, when Bill confesses, like, oh no, I'm going too, like, we're both dying tonight. You know, Frank, like, says, like, I do not support this. I should be furious with you, but under the circumstances, it's incredibly romantic. Yeah. So, just they are literally going to their grave together tonight. Like, they both know it, and they're still just, like, gazing lovingly at each other and just cracking jokes and just, like, this is how they want to go out. This is where they feel like it needs to end, and they're both fine with it. Like, yeah, man, it's crazy. But yeah, I guess it turns out that, like, this happens not long before Joel and Ellie finally show up. It's, you know, we kind of cut to basically present day, where Joel and Ellie, they eventually come up on Lincoln and they find the town seemingly abandoned. Joel uses the gate code to get in. They don't have to deal with traps, luckily. They just go right in, and they walk right into Bill and Frank's house. They notice the flowers out front are withered and neglected. That's not a good sign. And also no one answers when they go inside. And Ellie says out loud what no one wants to say out loud, like, what if they're gone? And Joel doesn't answer. So they find rotten food on the table. Joel finds out the bedroom door is locked. And Ellie finds a letter from Bill addressed to whomever, but probably Joel. Yeah. And there's also a truck key, a key to a truck on the table.
Yeah, and so she reads the letter, which asks Joel not to go into the bedroom, and tells him that he can take anything he needs. Specifically, he says, "I never liked you, but it's like we're friends, almost." And then the letter details Bill's disdain for other people, but how he changed when he met Frank, the one person that was worth saving. And he compares himself to Joel, saying that they're the type of men who defend people. And which I love because it was and God help any man who gets in our way. And I loved that. And Bill, Bill leaves all of his weapons and his equipment and tells Joel to keep Tess safe, which is a huge gut punch. And this causes Ellie to stop reading the letter. Joel takes it, storms out, and to read it privately. And you can just feel him bury the heaviness.
Yeah. Once again.
Man, just go. There's a poem from Khalil Gabbar about pain that Joel needs to read. But he really just, you could just feel him just swallow it.
Yeah.
And then he goes into Bill's garage to inspect the truck and get it ready. And he goes off screen for a second. So who knows what else he did.
Always thinking about truck batteries. He's basically he builds a battery. He goes back to Ellie and tells her, okay, well, here's the new plan. So he's now been told by Tess to keep Ellie safe and take her where she needs to go. And now that he can't give her off to Bill and Frank, it's still just down to him. So, reading Bill's letter, that has also kind of given him another nudge in the direction of Ellie's my responsibility now. I need to take her with me. I'm going to find Tommy, and she's coming with. And so she kind of gives Ellie the game plan. Okay, here's how it's going to go. We're going to Wyoming to find my brother, and he's in trouble. So I'm going to go help him, and you're going to come with, because Tommy's an ex-Firefly. He might know where the lab is that you need to get to. So that's the goal right now. He also lays out 3 ground rules for Ellie. Number 1, don't bring up Tess ever. Just do not mention her again. And I think this is a direct quote from the game too. As a matter of fact, we can keep our histories to ourselves, is what he says. And rule number 2, do not tell anyone about your immunity and keep your bite mark hidden. If they see it, they'll probably just shoot you. And lastly, number 3, do what I say when I say it. And pretty much mirror image of the game where, he kind of gives her the same rules and she just says, what you say goes. Okay. So this is the new dynamic has been established. It's just the 2 of them now. They're going to go on this trip, and Joel's you're my responsibility. You have to listen to me, and here's where we're going to go. Here's how we're going to do it. It's, the road has opened up in front of them now.
Man is simultaneously trying to cope and honor at the same time. And it's just, and it's rough. It's don't talk to me. They should just add in parentheses, don't ask me about anything, save our histories because I will fucking cry. I will abandon you and go hard cry behind a tree and come back like nothing happened. So don't say shit.
Joel is that joke from I Think You Should Leave, where it's I cannot talk about it without crying. Yeah. Just so don't ask me about it.
I have buried these emotions deep down, but there's not a lot of room left, kid. So knock it the hell off.
I haven't opened up to anybody in 20 years. I'm not about to start with you.
Right. And it's after we agree, after we go through the house rules, the 2 search the town and gather supplies for the journey and get cleaned up. You got the toilet paper, the deodorant, the showers, all the fun stuff.
Showers, yeah.
Ellie, asks Joel for one of Bill's guns because he's got a fucking wall of guns. And then Joel
Tons
like so much, so many guns. Like this would have been great in the game, but of course Joel is like no. And then however, she does stumble across Frank's pistol while kind of scavenging through their house, and then she tosses it in her backpack without Joel's knowledge. So we'll probably be seeing that gun again later.
That's right. Really quick, I want to point out, I think that's the same gun from the game, I think, or something similar at least. Like, in the game, Joel does eventually give Ellie a pistol, like, willingly. And says, like, okay, well, I guess I can trust you to handle this. You might be up for the responsibility, but it's for emergencies only. And the gun he gives her is a very compact, I think it's a 32 caliber. Looks like a Beretta. It's like a Beretta Model 70, I think it is. A bit of a gun nerd coming out here, but and the show version that Frank had, in that one scene where they're attacked, it looks like the same type of gun. So that's a cool little Easter egg there, a little callback there.
And it's a no spoilers, but it is a huge bonding moment. So I want to see how this is taken care of.
Yeah, it is.
But
yeah, I'm curious now what they're gonna do with that.
But they go to set off on this trip with the shitty S10. God. That car has been kicking it for like now more than almost 20 years.
Yeah, I guarantee you it wasn't new when the outbreak happened. So it must be like a half a century old truck at this point.
Oh yes, and I also want to go back and correct something I said earlier. They've been together 20 years. Or no, actually no, they haven't. It's still 16. I'm right because it was 4 years in. Yeah. I've heard. Yeah. Okay, I was like, hi. You won't get me, internet, and now I'm just like, you won't get me, brain.
You headed it off at the pass. Good job.
But so they get into the truck with like Ellie overwhelmed by the new experience because she's never been in a car before, and so it's like a spaceship. And then she places a cassette tape in the player, and and Joel, when Joel recognizes the song "Long Long Time" by Linda Ronstadt, he's like, "Whoa, this is Linda Ronstadt. Do you know about Linda Ronstadt?"
He loves it.
Like it's just like this is his shit. And they drive off into the world beyond, and the camera pulls into the bedroom window and Bill and Frank's house. And funny thing that has like nothing to do with any of this, but it's about Linda Ronstadt. I cannot hear the name Linda Ronstadt without thinking of this episode of Bob's Burgers where Linda tries to sing like Linda Ronstadt and all she does is say Linda Ronstadt over and over again. And so when they played it, the end of this episode, all I could hear was like Linda Ronstadt. It was absolutely crazy. Man. But that ends our coverage of episode 3, The Last of Us, titled Long Long Time. We are going to take a quick break because the S10 broke down, and then we'll be back with our overall thoughts.
Yeah, we're going to siphon some gas. Don't go anywhere. Okay, so we're back. And so, yeah, we've kind of broken down the episode. This was a big one. We already shared, I think, some thoughts and reactions we had about this episode. It's hard to keep it in because a lot of feelings. This is a very feels heavy episode, long, long time. So overall thoughts, looking back on it, put simply, this was brilliant. Just a brilliant episode. No doubt about it. Like, moreover though, like more than just being a good episode, this was a surprise for me. Like I was not expecting this type of story. So it was a very pleasant surprise, but it definitely was not what I expected out of this episode because, I kind of like after the first two, I was kind of expecting like, oh, okay, we're going to get a bunch of awesome action scenes where Joel and Bill are like fighting through swarms of infected in the Lincoln High School to like get the truck battery and shit. Cause that's kind of what you do in the game. So I was like, oh yeah, we're going to see that in the show. But what we got instead was this poignant, deep, and just, emotional episode that was also an incredible way to motivate Joel into accepting the call to adventure he got in the last episode. Yep. I feel like this was the thematic follow through on, the ending of episode 2 where Tess kind of entrusts him with this mission and sort of, do it for me kind of thing. And he wasn't really fully bought into this voyage yet until he had that letter from Bill. So like this whole thing, it moved the plot along, but in a way I didn't expect it to.
Yeah.
So it was completely just a surprise for me. And secondly, my other main takeaway here was just watching Bill and Frank have this fulfilling life together was, you know, obviously on one hand beautiful and just touching, but on the other hand was also an interesting inverse of the game versions of these characters, because in the game, like, Bill and Frank have a much more strained relationship. It's obviously like there's like a bad breakup, basically a falling out between them, and it's not nearly as happy of an ending for those two in the game. So it's like this story from the show, it could almost be seen as like the good timeline where like they get along, they, you know, resolve their differences, and they have a happy ever after. And the game version is the timeline where it's the bad timeline, where Bill pushes Frank away and doesn't adjust to having a partner that he can rely on and have someone rely on him. Like there's that give and take. So it's like a what if scenario almost. Like, what if Bill wasn't such a hard ass and such a, you know, stick in the mud, and he was allowing himself to feel things and be happy. And that's what the show shows us. Because
I think in the game, he never got to that I was never afraid until you showed up mode. I think it was like, he was a hardcore, hard-ass resource manager, and he was just so focused on surviving. Like, that ending, I watched someone play it the other day, and just getting the note, like, Frank was never shown until he was gone.
Not alive, at least.
Yeah. And, like, the note he leaves Bill about just, like, basically, I just, like, I fucking hate you. Like, it's just,
you suck.
Yeah. Like, you're just obsessed with this fucking town, and you never want to do anything. Like, you don't see anything beyond this. Like, such a huge difference.
Yeah, like, what HBO showed us in episode 3 a long, long time was the version where Bill decides, okay, I'll let you paint the house. Like, and the game version of Bill is, no, I'm not letting you cut the lawn. Go away.
Like,
and everything just goes downhill from there. It's crazy. But no, I love that. The parallels there were really cool to think about. And I just have a few other stray thoughts I'll wrap up with. It's just that I want to call out the scene at the beginning where Ellie freaks out about the Mortal Kombat cabinet. I thought that was a really cool callback to in Last of Us Part 1, and also the Left Behind DLC, where in Last of Us Part 1, they're in Bill's town when they find an arcade cabinet, and Ellie's like, oh yeah, my friend knew all about this game, it's cool. So I like that. Nice little reference there. I wrote this down earlier. 10 miles west of Boston isn't fooling anybody. Way too many mountains. I don't know. It's like, that got called out. Like, people were roasting that scene.
Even Stephen King.
Okay, that's true. Stephen King was like all over that shit. Like, Mr. King of Maine over here, the king of New England is like, nuh-uh. You can't get away with
that. Put his drink hat on with like a number 1 sign.
Yep. And I think I already mentioned this earlier, but like I couldn't get it out of my head. Like, what the fuck was Bill doing, just standing in the middle of the street shooting at the Raiders like that? But oh well, I'll let it go. But that did stick out.
It's the George Washington tactics. Don't fire till you see the whites of their eyes.
There you go. And I just jotted this down too. Is like, I love the conversation. Like, we talked about how the first cutaway to 3 years later when Bill and Frank are together now, and it's like, oh, fuck you. What's wrong with you? Resource management, this. And I just loved, like, there's that exchange where, like, oh, I'm sorry, Bill, I live in the real world, not a psycho bunker where 9/11 was an inside job and the government are all Nazis. Bill's like, the government are all Nazis. Frank goes, well, yeah, now, but not then.
And to which I was like, that was probably like the collective moment from a lot of people.
I guess to Frank's point, it's hard to compare. Like, at least we have democracy where we are now. Like, Fedra, full on just boot healing authoritarian. But that was pretty funny. The government are all Nazis. Just a lot of things I just really had fun with. This episode was an amazing combination of like things that were fun and heartwarming and just, entertaining, but also like the fucking payoff, if you can even call it that, of just the crushing blow of the ending to their story. Like, it was all beautiful.
Oh yeah.
Just beautiful.
Yeah. If you would tell me that they could take this one section of this game and turn it into that, I would have never believed it. Like
Yeah.
honestly, when I first saw the casting for like Nick Offerman as Bill, I was like, this is perfect. And like this has outpaced my expectations. Like I was like, oh, this is the perfect person to play it. Like this man seems like he lives this. Like this is his thing. And then it's like, no, you get Bill and Frank, and you get to see their entire story, and it's beautiful. Like I watched an entire episode about two people who like loved each other and worked out their differences and like made each other better. And it was fucking fantastic. Like it was such a good departure for the game. And like what I honestly want to say is like I know that like Naughty Dog Studio is like really diverse, and they've got like a lot of they have everybody from all walks of life, like people from the LGBTQ community, like ethnicities, colors, etc. And like I think that like they did Bill some justice, because there were some outdated parts of the Last of Us Part 1. Like it's like they're out here like, yeah, Bill will tell you like Frank was my partner, and it was like after you find Frank dead because he had hung himself after being bitten, and it's just like, okay, yeah, Frank is my partner, and then you really like how you can really piece together Bill's sexuality is because Ellie finds a porno magazine in Bill's collection of stuff. It was a gay porno magazine, and she kind of makes a joke about this like naked dude in this thing, and like then throws it out the window. She's like really like just kind of a shitty teen about it. Like it's like, ha ha ha, look at this, what I found. And so like I was like, that would have not translated well, and it would have just generally just been kind of off-putting and sucked. And like
it would have felt like a sidelining.
It would have. I guess. And so like there was, I can't remember exactly how Neil Druckmann put it, how they decided how they make changes. Like, but this was a great change to make, and this was like absolutely lovely. Instead of Bill being this mechanic that like, it's just like, here's a level I need to beat so I can get a car. It's like we just get this just I don't even call it like slice of life story, I guess. I don't know. And it's just, it was fantastic. I loved it. And I loved that it was really honest. And it was honest and true and natural. Like there was none of this like, we're like a gay couple, so it's warm embrace all the time, but like, nothing else. Like it was like, we're not going to do anything that we would normally have like couples do on a TV show. So it's like you got
a straight couple.
You get like them kissing, them being loving, they have sex. Like it's fantastic. All of the things that you would do
and argue and argue, fight.
Like it was I loved it because it was so true to life, and it wasn't like it wasn't faked. Like, because I see that a lot when they try when you have LGBTQ representation, that like a lot of times people can fake it. Like they fake things, and so it feels unnatural. It's like, oh, they're not going to kiss here, or it'll be like peck on the cheek. I was like, I loved this. It's natural from start to finish. And like even just wrapping it up with the line, like when in the last day, when Frank is like, I'm not going to give you this like every day with you is a blessing from God, but like I've had like, I was like, this is just so good. I loved this. It was like you guys are this is a very it was a very honest and real just couple.
The level of authenticity and nuance in all of it was astounding. Like it is so authentic. I guess we could point out like Nick Offerman in real life isn't a gay man. He's married to a woman, but like I think he did understand the emotional struggle, the turmoil of opening up on any level, like whether it was to a friend who became more than a friend. And they understood the assignment so well. Shout out to Murray Bartlett, who played Frank. They both just had such amazing chemistry. And like you said, the honesty of the entire situation came through them so well. And it was all written so well and performed so well. Just everything.
And if you pull it out, if you even go outside of them being like a gay couple and everything, it's like these are the struggles that all couples face in life.
Sure.
Like there's the God, I remember how this was put, but it's basically like I loved this dynamic where you have sort of the open person, like the open, like joyful person, and then you have the closed off person that is like the closed off tough person that is like more that's only joyful with this person, like they open up for this person, and I love it. And like that is an experience of if you're a queer couple or straight couple, like it was just that's what it felt honest. Like you could like this is a very like this was just like a very honest like couples experience. And I also just like the LGBTQ representation was fantastic. Like one of the best pieces of media. And I think the last thing I will say about this is, it's like you get so consumed by the Frank and Bill story. It's so funny to think that like there's more to this episode. Like even when I watched it again today, there's a lot of powerful parts in like the Joel and Ellie thing, but you're just like this Frank and the Bill and Frank part are just like so powerful. But what I loved is what we talked about with Joel. Like Joel is like this compartmentalizing king. Like he can just he can just fold the worst situations into himself and like continue to do stuff, and then just you can just hear the explosions on the inside. And like if you think about it, what this shows, and this was a good point, this is a few points someone pointed out to me, but it's like in a span of few days he lost nearly every person that was remotely close to him except for Tommy. Like Bill and Frank, they were friends for years. Like, they were friends for years. Tess, like this man lost everybody pretty much, and except for his brother, and he doesn't know if his brother is alive right now. He's searching for him. So like Joel is experiencing more and more loss, and like while he doesn't want to talk about it and while he doesn't wear his like heart on his sleeve, we get these moments. We get like these moments where he has to take the note outside. Like he doesn't open the door, and he doesn't want to read the note at first because he kind of knows, and it's just like, you do it. Like, Ellie, you read this note. Like normally Joel wouldn't trust somebody with something so personal because he can't even talk about his feelings. And like, we see he has to go outside. He needs a minute. And then when he comes back, but he can't just take a minute and come back, because then people are going to ask him about Ellie's going to grill him about his feelings. So what does he do? He goes and makes a car battery.
He gets busy. He puts his hands to work. Yeah. And and you're right though. Like that's a good point about just compartmentalizing. Like that's something that a lot of people do I do it in daily life, where like you have to take a moment to take inventory of like, what am I feeling, and where's that coming from? And it's like, okay, I've identified it, I've categorized it, I've acknowledged it, but now I have to move on. It's like he's, and like you said, like we can tell very, very visibly, he's an old hand at this. He's a pro at just, all right, here's what's going on up here, and I'm going to go ahead and just lock it away and move on. Go build a battery. We keep seeing that happen, and it's really interesting.
And it's like it's slowly getting to it. Like it you could tell, like you get those subtle clues throughout the episode that he is mourning, but he doesn't know how to anymore.
Yes.
Like he just doesn't know how to do it. Like the second he had to take to soak his hand, he stacked those rocks, was probably like, I'm gonna go soak my hand because it hurts.
Right. Yeah. And the rocks, like that's the most grieving, like that's the most emotional processing he's gonna do, like probably ever, about that. So that's as good as it gets.
Thanks Bill for the truck. Like, but it's like, I'm not gonna even think about that. Like my only two other friends are dead now. It's like,
yeah, man, it's it's depressing to think about. He's got nowhere else to go now. Like it's really just the only way out is forward, and it's no other option but to just keep going. And I've been saddled with this brat, this punk kid that no one else is looking out for. I have to do it now, and just all right. Well, fuck. Like it is what it is. It's what life's a garden. Dig it. Joe Dirt. Like let's just go. Let's just do it. I guess.
And it's like even worse that he's got the kid because we already see that like he's not going to admit it, but having a kid around is triggering some old feelings because like when he beat Lee to death, he was thinking of that old soldier and he's protecting his daughter.
He was going back into father mode a little bit subconsciously,
and he's still got the bruised hands. And I know him looking like every time he looks at his hand, he's always like, like the slow kind of like grip, like he's just like. I feel like every time he sees his hand, he sees Lee, he thinks about that situation and he thinks about how he felt then, and it probably brings him back. Yeah. So it's like you got this kid there that's like, you're not my daughter. I don't consider you anything like this, but it's like you're still a kid in my protection. And the last time there was a kid in my protection, she died, and like that was the worst moment of my life. So it has to be like that's also has to be a factor in like why he's like kind of keeping himself so far away from her emotionally.
Yeah. It could, like you remind me of my daughter in every single way I don't want you to. Like any way that Ellie reminds Joel of Sarah, like it's all going to be painful. There's no way to remind him of his daughter that's going to not be painful to him.
Even when they go back and forth and shoot the shit, like when they were shooting shit at each other, he was shooting shit with his daughter in the first episode. Like he'll do it to a certain point, then he just kind of pulls back. Yeah.
It's crazy, man. Like, and I love that we got those moments in this episode too. Like, this was an episode all about Bill and Frank. Like, that was like their story was central to this episode. But I love how it was like bookended. You kind of like have like the beginning and the end was you get to see Joel and Ellie's dynamic develop, and Bill and Frank's dynamic develop, and kind of see its conclusion in between. It's a story sandwich. Yeah. A delicious one,
Yeah, with a tragically beautiful love story.
Yeah, seriously. I think last thing we'll do before we wrap up here, I just want to shout out a couple more lines of dialogue, just some quotes that I found very, very interesting. I just really loved at the beginning when Bill's in his basement, he's watching the Fedra soldiers leave, and he just kind of looks. Very, very much Dale Gribble energy.
100%.
It looks like not today, you new world order jackboot fucks. And that was actually his first spoken line of the episode. I was like, as soon as I heard Nick Offerman say those words, like, here we fucking go. Let's do this. I love it.
Oh my God. Like part of me feels like Nick Offerman was like, here's my, like when they cast him, he was like, this is my actual survivalist handbook. Let's just do this in the beginning. And but it was good because like if he didn't do what he did, he would have been shot and died in a ditch.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he would have ended up in that mass grave.
Yeah, they were just transporting to kill.
Turns out he was right. He was right all along. Everyone laughed at Bill, but Bill had the right idea.
Who is laughing now?
And one other thing I keep thinking about, it was so funny. I loved the bickering at the first time skip where Frank and Bill are like, having their marital spat. Just like, I loved how, Bill's about to say something like, it's about resource, and Frank just cuts him off like, Bill, if you say resource management, so help me, I will run through one of your tripwires. I just loved how like lifelike this episode, this little argument was. Like, no, just married couples do that. They just like they try to keep it productive, but it's also like this is just a little bickering session they got going on. It was so funny.
You know each other's ticks, and you know each other you're gonna say it in a certain moment.
Yeah, 3 years. Like I know what you're about. I know you're a stickler for resource management, but fuck off with that. For once.
Right. I just want to paint a house. Damn it, and cut some grass. That's all I want. Oh my God.
Oh, but man.
Overall, just final thoughts. I will just say that this was probably the best. I will say this is probably the best piece of media that I have consumed in years. This is a fantastic episode. This is like, I watched this episode, like watching this episode was just like, it's just beautifully painful. Like watching it twice, still like it still just has the same sting. Like you cry through the whole thing, and you cry for different reasons. Like this was fantastic. The representation was fantastic. This was such a beautiful story for what would have been an otherwise insignificant character in the grand scheme of things. Like instead of Bill just wandering back into his town alone with nobody, knowing that the only person that he like cohabitated with hated him, they went out together, and it was their choice to do so. Like the last line of I'm old and I'm satisfied and you are my purpose was beautiful. It was beautiful. It was dark. And like, if this singular episode doesn't get some sort of award, I will be fucking pissed off. And also
it's a sure thing. We're looking at Emmy nominations, no doubt.
100%. And, somebody I know said that, like, can you imagine that, like, the way that, if I'm looking at the changes that they made to this episode and how beautiful it is, I can only imagine how, in the best way possible, how fucked up things are about to get if you've played this game. And that is like what I'm thinking of. So if you're a review bomber, go to hell. There you go. And that's the mic drop.
I think that's our general stance on Lore Party here. Is if you're a review bomber, just get a life. Like fuck off. It's just in general. But no, like with you 100%. Like I think there are already some Emmy conversations happening about this episode. Like there's no way it's not going to get some kind of nod at least. But no, also that's a great point. We're not ready at all. We're not fucking ready for where this series is about to go with this season. Can't wait. I've watched this episode twice now too. Like on my second watch, I didn't full on cry either time, but I welled up both times. Like it hit just as hard the second time. I watched it alone the first time, then with my wife the second time, and we were both just devastated, gutted both times. No man, like you said, change is good. Like I'm with it. Like this was an amazing direction to go in with, like you said, what would have otherwise been a side story, just kind of like a background, just piece of fluff, really. Just a little bit of window dressing kind of background flavor that would have been sort of pushed to the side. But instead it was given the space it needed, the respect it deserved, and just like it, they just gave that story room to grow, and it grew into something truly special, truly unique and amazing. So bravo.
Well, that about wraps it up. We hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you did, please take a second to rate and review us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It really helps us grow the show. And be sure to connect with us on Twitch, Instagram, and Twitter at @lore_party. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.